So the rest of the world today, what's it like? Outside of the West, and really remember this started in America and it spread across the Atlantic, really to the Anglophone world, it's still not really a feature of non-Anglophone cultures in Europe. This kind of clone gay, you know, the two buff guys, the egalitarian. Mike Bailey, good guy with words, you know, he called it egalitarian gayness. They're all both exactly the same, you know, they got beards, they just look the same, you know, like twins. That's really not caught on outside of the Anglophone world, and certainly outside of the US. In the rest of the world, you see the older model. You'll see older gay men who are kind of Queenie-like, and the young ones who are their targets. And in a place like the Philippines, this has all shifted quite a lot towards the young side. Now, we have proper standards in the West. We have accepted that there are things that people should be a certain age before they indulge in, and that there's a notion of connection between the age at which you're responsible enough to take decisions for yourself and at the point at which you start to have sex. But in some cultures, it's not really like that. And you'll find that in many cultures around the world, you'll find that these men who might be in their mid-20s, 30s, 40s or older are actually pursuing very young boys. And I'm talking about boys in their 12, that kind of age. And in many cultures this is completely normal. In Pakistan, for example. Pakistan's a Muslim country and everybody thinks, oh, but you know, you can't do that. Islam's totally against homosexuality. Well, it is and it isn't. The Islamic understanding of homosexuality is exactly what has been created in the West, in the clone scene. It's sexual love between two adult males. And in Islam, an adult male is a man old enough to grow a beard. So basically what you're saying is that two men who are sort of in the mid-20s or over, no, they're not allowed to have that. But boys who can't grow beards are not men. So they don't have the rights or the responsibilities that men have. That makes them legitimate sexual targets. So if you go to Pakistan, by the way, don't go to Pakistan, right? Okay, no, I've been to Pakistan. It's a dangerous place. Don't go there. Unless you really know what you're doing. Don't go to Pakistan. But we'll, think about Pakistan. And the next place I'm going to talk about, it's even worse. But we're going to talk about it. There you'll find that boys, because women are just unavailable in these cultures. It's very hard to find women who are able to have non-marital sex. It just doesn't happen, A woman would be killed for doing that. It's totally repressive in that sense. So where do the men go? Do the men just not have sex? Like hell, men never not have sex. They never don't have sex. So what they do is they have sex with boys. And boys offer themselves for sex. They do, from the age of 12 and 13 upwards. And if you go to any place where there's a lot of guys hanging about, bus stations are absolutely notorious for this in Pakistan. You'll find loads and loads of boys hanging about. And you wonder, what are these boys doing? What they're doing is looking for clients. They're looking for someone who will offer them, basically, this is real bad stuff, it's a meal and a bed for the night. Paid for with, a stretch. That's what it's all about. The same is absolutely the case in Afghanistan, and people have actually stood up and put their heads above the parapets and said, this isn't very, very good. Where you'll find that the traditional model is for a man to take a boy as a lover. And when I'm talking about a boy, I'm talking about young boys, 9, 10, 12 years old, younger. And this is really well documented. It happens all the time. Islam doesn't have anything to say about it because it's not sex between two men with beards. It's not the sex between two adult men, you see. That's the crucial bit. It's the adult male bit. So in a way, these cultures are actually reflecting exactly what we were seeing when if we go back to what we're talking about in the Renaissance in Florence, where you have crowds of boys hanging around street corners trying to solicit older men. And what were they going to get? They were going to get, you know, comfortable night for the night. They'd probably be street kids otherwise. They're going to get fed. They were going to get a place to sleep, you know. And just a little bit of love and comfort, you know, which everybody needs. And so you see this today. You'll see this today if you're brave or foolhardy enough to go to a place like Pakistan. But there's many other places that you'll see it. I mean, it's not at all uncommon. The last time I was in the Philippines, I was sitting with my girlfriend having a beer, and we were watching this young, very young gay guy prancing about. I mean, outrageous, in the street, dancing in between the jeepneys as they went back and forward, the jeepneys and the tricycles, and we were just having a laugh, you know. And eventually he came over, didn't speak any English, but he and the girl I was with, they were talking away in Filipino, Tagalog, and it turned out he was 13, you know, and he was active, he was sexually active, and 13, you know. So I saw him subsequently, and he was with friends of his who I presume were in the same position as he was, and some of them would have been 9, you know. This whole thing is very common, right? The idea of the younger male and the older guy, and that, I mean, that's who's dealing. That's who their sexual partners are. They're not having sex with each other. They're having sex with older gay men who are themselves no longer sexually desirable because they've become too old, because they've gone past that mid-20s point at which, you know, that's it. They have to move on to a new phase in life. Now, I'm not condoning any of this. I'm not saying, well, that's a good thing, that's a bad thing. Well, you can't, it's a different culture. You know, and you can't just go into a culture and say, well, I have to bring my cultural ideas with me, and that this is what must be, you know, that's cultural imperialism. You can't do that. Feminists, please remember that. It's how that cake crumbles in that particular situation. So I really used this to try and illustrate that the situation in the West is peculiar, right? It sits very, very badly with the more traditional and vastly more widespread model, which is of highly effeminate, androgyne young boys with effeminate but more muscular older males, being your classic gay pairing. I came across a number of cases where we found 2 gay boys of similar age had come together as a couple, in which one of them very shortly after came out as transsexual. Right? She was gay already. She just said, right, that's it, I'm a girl now, you know. And the reason was that she was playing the girl role in the relationship. He had adopted the male role. That was fine, everybody was happy like that. And they just turned into a very sweet and absolutely normal couple. Except they were both, if you'd seen them 2 years before, they would both look like gay boys. 2 years later, one of them looked like a slightly more masculine guy, and the other one was a full-on ladyboy. You know, so that's close. You know, you've got a relationship there. There's things going on that are in common, but this is completely impossible, or at least it's very hard to recognise in the West when you have this domination of the gay community by the accommodationists, because they're not going to tolerate this idea that, you know, oh, you know, fine, I'll just be the girl then, and I'll get a dress and grow my hair, I'll hit the hormones, I'll be a happy girl, and you can play the guy. That ain't going nowhere in the West. It just isn't. And well, you know, everybody makes their own way in life, but I have known an awful lot of gay men in my life who were really kind of uncomfortable being masculine, you know. They didn't fit with them well. And you could see it just in the way they move and the way they relate to others and their mannerisms and general comportment was like, you're just not happy being a guy, are you? And okay, so they were, in the West we would say perhaps that they didn't have gender dysphoria to any great level, but gender dysphoria is a very strange thing. It is very conditioned by social intolerance. the more intolerant the society, the stronger the dysphoria will have to be for someone to come out, to change, to transition, unless they are absolutely sure they can get away with it and appear as a woman, which traditionally has been the situation in the West. In Southeast Asia, there's a lot of, there are many HSTS trans women who are like that. You just wouldn't know. You know, you literally would not know. And I've been shocked, for goodness sake, you know. Really? I've been going there for years. And if you haven't that kind of level of familiarity with the situation, there's no way you would know. But there's another group who are kind of, maybe they're not like HEP obvious, but, you know, to the local eye, they'll go, that's a ladyboy, you know. The Westerner might be fooled, but so that's a ladyboy too, you know. Those people would probably turn out to be gay males in the West, because they can't really get away with it completely as girls. In Southeast Asia, it's like, oh, just be a girl, fine, who cares, you know. And I definitely do know people who swap. You know, they get a new job, and then the new job they have to be a guy. So, oh, I'm going to cut off my hair, you know. And then you see them 2 years later, and they, oh, you got your hair back. What happened? Ah, I got fired. You know, can't have that. I got fired, so I'm just back to being a girl, you know. And so there's a certain, you know, in that area there, I suppose in the West you might call it gender fluidity. It's not really, because they were always girls. They were just pretending to be boys, you know. The gender's innate. It's just that for the duration of the period that the society demanded that they would be masculine appearing, yeah, okay, they did it. As soon as that requirement went away, it's like, oh, forget it. It's too much hassle. I'll just be a girl, you know, and wear hot pants and a tight t-shirt and grow my hair. You know? So that's the style of homosexual behaviour and the crossover between, if you like, gay males and feminine gay males and HSTS. It's remarkably different outside of the West from what you see in the West. And one thing I would say is that I think we are seeing a tendency for the West to come in line, which is an interesting turn, you know, because if you go back to 1975, the 80s, say, that's probably the high point of the clone scene, you know. There were quite a lot of trannies in the scene in the 1960s, and they were like, oh, get rid of them. And now it's coming back, you know, you're getting more obvious HSTS. Blair White. Blair White would never have happened in the 1990s. Never. Just wouldn't have happened. And part of the reason is social media, I think, which has opened up people to a slightly broader worldview, perhaps. It's not really to do with a generational thing, I don't think, because, you know, if you go back, you'll see it. I think that actually the high tide of that clone homosexuality really was 1980s. And in a way, maybe HIV did something to change it, I don't know. Looking at the Philippines, I do see what they call their macho gays, you know, that's the, oh, we're so masculine, macho men, all that crap, you know. But that's what they're called. I mean, the rest of the gays go, macho gays, you know. They don't want to know. They don't want to know. They're embarrassed by them. So the macho gays tend to hang about together, and if you're into that sort of thing, Puerto Galleria on Mindoro, that's where you go. And there are a few places in Manila where they hang out, but most of the homosexual expression will conform to the older model. You know, that is the girly boys and the older queens. And, you know, on top of that you've got actual HSTS and ladyboys. And ladyboys are attracted, and in the main, it's straight guys who chase them. They wouldn't chase boys at all. They're interested in them as girls. So that, you know, I mean, I consider myself bisexual because I'm attracted to ladyboys, but a lot of the guys who are the same as me, who are attracted to ladyboys, they don't consider themselves bisexual. It's like, no, I'm not bisexual, I'm straight. Fine, you know, that's that. I think there's an argument for both cases. I think that they're saying that they're totally attracted to the femininity, which is fine, so am I. But there's also that cock to deal with. You know, It's not just the carrot. You know, phalluses have certain symbolic power as well as physical power, so I'm not really convinced. But anyway, that's a side issue. So that's been a bit longer than I thought, you know, but I thought that needed a good talk about. As to the future, I don't feel qualified to say. I personally think that we're going through a period at the moment where it could actually go either way. And my feeling is it will probably go, that the pendulum has swung as far as one way as it's likely to. I think peak trans is past, by the way. I think it is. I think you're going to see a big swing back the other way. And I think that at the same time you'll see a greater tolerance towards a more varied expression. But there won't be I think that the political impetus that it's had, I think it's spent. You know, there's all political movements have a high tide mark. You know, there's a point at which they go, right, they've really got what they want, and then they're going to come back down again. And I think that for gay men in the West, so-called same-sex marriage, that was really the point at which it was like, okay, fine. And that's done. You know, it's done. And it's like, oh, well, you know, after you've fought the battle, you relax. You get on with life. You know, you go back to your farm and you do whatever you do. And that has been done. Behind these movements, of course, there is also feminism to consider, and that's something else that has a bearing. But I'm going to do a different program about that because it's too much to deal with here. But as far as the gay scene and the HSTS are concerned, I think that they've seen a great deal of movement, and I would think that we would see a bit of quietening down now. I don't think that the Western model is going to be accepted in places like the Philippines, and I think that's largely because there's no need for it. There isn't the level of social resistance to being gay, being obviously gay, being flaming, that there was in the United States or in Britain in the 1960s. I mean, I grew up in the 1960s. I know what it was like. It was hellish. You know, if you were gay, the last bloody thing you were ever going to do was let anybody know it. You know, because you'd get your head kicked in. And I mean kicked in. That just doesn't happen. You know, Southeast Asia, no way. Gays aren't discriminated. Gays are, maybe there is some discrimination, but it's not severe. It's not like that. And the West has kind of got there. You know, Milo Yiannopoulos, he said that the best thing to be in America now is a gay man. And to an extent, I think he's right. You can't really have a campaigning, you know, organisation that's, oh, let's get the next trenches, let's, you know, do that, let's plant the flag. If you've already captured all the trenches and planted the flag, which they have. So I think we'll see some changes. I think we'll see some change. A general relaxation and a cooling of temperature, I think, is what's going to happen. I think that the focus of the SJW movement and basically the social, the cultural Marxists behind them, that'll shift. But you think you can already discern that the gay movement is kind of like, we've really got what we wanted. So, there, I maybe rambled a bit at the end, but here you are, Rick. I hope that rather long and over several episodes piece answers your question. It is a really interesting thing. There's no doubt about it that sexuality is the most fascinating thing about humans. It's amazing. It's just amazing. And it's not just because, you know, I like sex. Of course I like sex. Everybody likes sex. But how sex works and our relationships with each other on the basis of sex, absolutely incredible. Incredible. You know, you think about other animals and then look at humans and it's incredible. It's just amazing. We are an amazing species. Take care. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Leaves you loads and loads of room.